Hi there, and welcome to this month of L.I.F.T classes, Leadership in Forward Training. We're so glad that you're joining us on our broadcast, and we've got a live class right here in the month of November. It's amazing how quickly the year has flown by. It just seems like not too long ago, we were setting up in this building and ripping out carpet, and now it's been 2 years. The year has gone by very quickly. Come on in, everybody. Come on in. So we're just getting started, and we want to welcome you to Leadership in Forward Training. Today I'm going to be talking about a leadership question, and this leadership question is something we should ask ourselves all the time, and that is, what are you doing? Have you ever wondered what? I'm supposed to be a leader, and then it just gets harder and harder and harder. But do you know that leadership is not always easy? Leadership is not always easy. Now, I know that many of you in this room aren't actually on staff at any given church, or maybe you're not a pastor, maybe you're not a leader in your church, but we're all called to be leaders because we're all called to influence people for Jesus. I said in my service this morning, we just want people to follow us right into heaven, right? So if they're not following you, then you're not leading, right? So we want people to follow us into heaven. We want to have that influence over people, and so we want to hone in on some leadership skills in order to be more effective in doing that. So today I want to ask the question, what are you doing? Some of the reasons we have to ask that question is not because we're questioning ourselves in being a leader, but because some of the things we're doing as a leader, we shouldn't be doing. As a leader, we need to ask ourselves, what are you doing? Because some of those very things we should not be doing. And then there's other things that we should be doing as a leader, and guess what? We're not doing it. And so that's why we ask ourselves, what are you doing as a leader? And I'm going to ask that question today. What are you doing? All right? I'm going to use a text out of Exodus to kind of bring it all together, and we're going to talk about Moses and his father-in-law Jethro, and how Jethro had a few questions for Moses, and one in particular, what are you doing? Okay, so let's go into Exodus chapter, let's go to 18. And I'm going to read in verse 13, although you know the story, right? They had just been journeying, and Moses just led the people out of slavery, and now he's got this big congregation on his hands, and he's trying to figure this whole thing out. And Moses becomes the priest that will kind of be the judge and jury and help them understand what God wants in their lives. And Moses goes through all of that. And here in chapter 18, verse 13 of Exodus, it says this. And so it was on the next day that Moses sat to judge the people. And the people stood before Moses from morning until evening. So when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did for the people, he said, "What is this thing that you are doing for the people? And why do you alone sit and all the people stand before you from morning until evening?" And Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a difficulty, they come to me, and I judge between one and another, and I make known the statutes of God and his laws." So Moses' father-in-law said to him, "The thing that you do is not good." You know, sometimes we're leading in our churches, we're leading in our jobs, and we're doing everything we can to do the best that we can. And if we ask ourselves what we're doing, we could discover that that which we are doing as a leader is not good. Our heart is right, but what we're doing is not good. Okay? And let me just give you an example. Now, this is just really basic leadership, but let me give you an example. I don't really play guitar. Now, I like playing the bass. It's 4 strings. Add a 5th and a 6th, I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay? But my heart is to worship God with all that is within me. But that doesn't mean I can walk up onto the stage during worship, pick up a guitar, and start rocking out. Because I don't know what I'm doing. My heart is right. My intentions are right. My motives are right. But I don't know how to play guitar. So that which I'm doing, if I pick up a guitar, is not good. Just because you have a heart to play the piano doesn't mean you should go up on that stage and try playing if you've never played before. Come on, somebody. Right? This is just good leadership stuff. You got to know what you're doing. Okay? Just because you have a heart to lead people doesn't mean you should be leading people. Just because you have a heart to pastor doesn't mean you should be pastoring. Just because you have a heart for missions doesn't mean you should be on the mission field if you don't know what you're doing, if you haven't been trained. Because you'll die. Right? So these things, you've got to ask yourself, am I doing it right? What am I doing? What am I doing? And so Jethro was asking Moses, what are you doing, man? Because the things you're doing, it's not good. It's not good. So let's look at what his context was here. It says, where was I?
17.
Oh, so Moses, his father-in-law, said to him, the thing that you do is not good. Both you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out, for this thing is too much for you. You are not able to perform it by yourself. Listen now to my voice. I will give you counsel, and God will be with you. Stand before God for the people, so that you may bring the difficulties to God, and you shall teach them the statutes and the laws, and show them the way in which they must walk and the work they must do. So understand, Moses had just led the Israelites out of Egypt after 400 years of slavery. He was journeying towards Israel, their ancient homeland. In the midst of the Sinai desert, he found himself laboring from early morning until late at night, attempting to resolve conflicts in his people. And Moses unintentionally became a workaholic. Now, let me just be transparent and open and honest with you guys. I went into ministry and I was excited. I started my ministry in 1991. The majority of my ministry. I actually started speaking for my dad when I was 16 years old, and that was before 1991. But in 1991, I became part of the youth staff of a church in Tri-Cities, Washington. In 1992, I believe it was, I went into full-time ministry, and I haven't looked back since. Okay? Now, in all of my time of ministry, I had to learn a thing or two. And in my 7 years of marriage, or 19 years of marriage, on my 7th year, I got really excited. You go into ministry, you get excited, okay? You launch a church, you plant a church, you get excited about that, okay? And we planted a church in Des Moines, Iowa, and I was super stoked. I was excited. Our church grew to about 100-something, and we were excited. We were moving in Des Moines, Iowa. A lot of stuff was happening. It was exciting. But, you know, it was a church plant, so obviously I had to go to work too. So I was working a secular job. I was pastoring a brand new body of believers in a church, and to top it all off, my father was there dying of leukemia when I was ministering in Des Moines, Iowa. All of that to say, man, all of this came a little overwhelming, and in my 7th year of marriage, Christy and I will both be honest with you, we nearly lost everything. Because unintentionally, I'm trying to pastor the church, I'm trying to solve people's problems, I'm trying to counsel them, I'm trying to do this and that and the other, all at the same time trying to be with my father, who was passing away of leukemia, and then be a husband and a father to my kids, a husband to my wife, a father to my kids. All of that became overwhelming. I unintentionally became, like Moses, a workaholic. And somebody had to stop me and say, listen, this thing you're doing, it's not good. Well, what do you mean it's not good? I'm pastoring. I'm praying for people. I'm counseling people. I'm shepherding people. I'm being there for my people. I'm doing, it all looks good on paper, but somebody had to kick my tail and say, this is what you're doing, it's not good, man. It's not good. Well, nobody told me that. Until one day I come home and my wife is bawling at the kitchen table. And I said, what's wrong, honey? She looked at me with tears in her eyes and says, I can't do this no more. I said, what do you mean you can't do this? What are you talking about? Yeah, I can't do this no more. Well, the bottom line is I couldn't work from sun up to sundown. I couldn't minister from sun up to sundown. I couldn't pastor from sun up to sundown. And I almost lost everything because I was trying to be like Moses. Because I thought what Moses did was pretty cool. He led a whole bunch of people out of slavery. He became a pastor overnight with a bunch of people, right? And I thought that was pretty cool. I thought, man, God, give me that. Whoops. Be careful. Be careful, right? So he unintentionally became a workaholic. So his father-in-law, Jethro, who was a priest of Midian, if you look in Exodus, you'll see that the father-in-law saw in Moses something that from the outside might have looked good, but from the inside he knew that the work Moses was doing was unsustainable. So yeah, you might be able to counsel somebody at sunup, and you might be able to pray with somebody and have a coffee appointment with somebody, and then right at the end of their day, because everybody works, so they can only meet you after they get off work, so you stay late, right? As a pastor, you stay late because they can only meet you when they get off work. So you stay late, and at 5 o'clock you meet with somebody to help them get through their issues. And then you have Bible college class, and then you have worship rehearsals, and the next thing you know, you're going to bed at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. You haven't even spent an hour with your wife or your kids. And so Jethro knew, because this is not sustainable. You can't keep doing this. You might be able to do it for a day. You might be able to do it for a week. You might be able to do it for a year. But for me, the 7th year of marriage, it almost killed me. My 7th year with my wife, it almost killed me. So I needed a Jethro to go, Kev, what you're doing is not good. It's not good, right? Well, we sometimes always learn the hard way, but that's where I learned some things right there. So Jethro pulled Moses aside and said, listen, son, here's the deal. You're an awesome man of God. You obviously hear God. You're obviously brave because you just went and stood up to this huge, powerful man who enslaved our people. But man, I have to give you some solid advice right now. Let me give you some counsel. And what was his counsel? This is what you're doing. It's not good. It's not good. Here's what I'm glad is that Moses didn't throw a fit and go, you don't know what you're talking about, old man. Because some of us have that attitude. We think because we've had a win or two that we can talk to our elders like that. You know? You don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I can't even imagine where I would be today if I run into a man like Bob who has infinitely more knowledge of the word than I do. And I looked at him and said, listen, man, I've been doing this for a long time, 25 years. Bob, don't come in and try to teach over me because here I am, I'm the pastor. What if I had that attitude? That'd be ridiculously stupid. And if I was a Jethro, I'd kick my own butt. You know what I mean? It's like, that's just ridiculous, right? But some of us think that because we've got a certificate on our wall, or because we have a diploma, or because we've served in this many churches or for this long, that we've arrived, and that we don't need the counsel of our elders. But that's just not true. It's just not true. So Jethro comes and he says, let me give you some counsel, and here's what I want to teach you today in the hour that we have. Here's 5 principles of leadership that Jethro pulled out into Moses. Okay? Number 1, working nonstop is unsustainable. Working nonstop is unsustainable. So there are often times where I have to just stop. Otherwise, what I'm doing here at CLC is unsustainable. I have to stop. I have to take a breath. I have to reset. I have to refresh. Listen, sometimes as a pastor, I feel just like my computer. You know, your computer works nonstop. We don't know it, but our computer works nonstop. And after so many days and nights of working nonstop, we go to bed at night, we leave our computer on. And when we leave our computer on, it's still working. And after so many days of working nonstop, eventually it's non-sustainable. And what do we have to do? Well, we used to have to do this whole Control-Alt-Delete thing, right? So we have to reboot it. It has to be rebooted. And it's the same with our ministries and our lives. If we don't shut ourselves down on occasion so that we can reboot and refresh, it's unsustainable. And so Jethro was telling Moses, listen, you're telling me what you're doing. You're getting up at sunup and you're going to bed at sundown. And he said, why are you doing this to yourself? It's unsustainable. You're working too much. You've got to shut down. And so this is the first thing that Jethro pointed out in verse 17 and 18. Jethro didn't pull any punches. He said it a matter-of-factly, this what you're doing is not good. Then he says this in this same counsel. He says, and by the way, if you keep doing what you're doing, not only are you going to hurt yourself, but you're going to hurt your people. Now that one caught up to me. I was like, whoa, wait, what? This is for the people. And yet, if I continue to serve them sun up to sundown without taking a break and refreshing, now I not only hurt myself, but I hurt my people. Well, that's not good. And because if you think about it, if I don't take the time to reboot and refresh, and I come to church on Sunday morning and try to give you a message, and yet I have not rebooted or refreshed myself, right? You're going to know the difference. You're going to feel the difference. And so not only is it bad on my part, but it's bad for you. Because now you don't get to receive the revelation that God wanted to put in me for you because I was working too much. Right? And I will admit that there are times where I'm so busy that I'll be refreshing myself on my notes, sometimes at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I'm at this church by 7:45 on Sunday morning. Right? And so sometimes I'm a little tired. Some of you have asked me, Pastor Kevin, are you tired today? You look a little tired. And anytime someone asks me that, and I'm not telling you not to ask me that, holds me accountable, but when people do ask me that, I go home and kick myself. Because I pride myself on coming to this house of God ready to rock and roll with you. And if I can't do that because I'm too tired and my face shows it, then I have not only failed myself, but I have failed my people. Because there are people that are going to be looking at you as a leader. And the last thing they want to see is their leader in worse shape than them.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's how we come across. I don't ever want one of you guys to come up to me, Pastor Kevin, I just need your help. Oh, never mind. Looks like you need help. I don't want to bother you with my junk because it looks like you're in worse shape than me today. So, right? I don't ever want that to be. So Jethro was telling Moses, listen, you're not only hurting yourself, you're hurting your people.
That's right.
You're tired and you're old. And you just went through a lot. So what's more important is that you have genuine, authentic relationships with your people and that you delegate. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So number one, working nonstop is unsustainable. You can't work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week and think you're going to survive that.
That's right.
And let me tell you, something will eventually give if you try to do that. Something will eventually give, either your health or your marriage or your kids. Something's going to give when you work yourself into the ground like that. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, some 7 days a week. You're going to work yourself into the ground, and something's going to give, and you don't want that to happen. Okay? It wears out your people, and we want to just get a grip on reality. You can't do that. Okay? You can't do that. Number 2, Jethro pulled this out. Jethro pulled this out and shared this with Moses. And he was sharing with Moses that he had to understand his unique calling. And so what I'm offering to you today is you need to understand your unique giftedness. What has God gifted Brandon with? So we're looking and we're identifying and we're studying and we're feeling it out. And Brandon has to come to a reality of what God has anointed Brandon with and what God has strengthened Brandon with and what God has gifted Brandon with. Now, once you identify that, this is what Jethro was trying to tell Moses. Stop doing everybody else's job. Okay? Because Moses was the only cat doing anything. So that's why he worked so long from morning till night, because he had to do everything. Right? So here's where we are challenged as pastors, because I want to lead by example. So if I got to vacuum this floor, I'll vacuum this floor. Most of the time on Tuesdays, I come into this church and I straighten all the chairs and I clean up all the rows and I take out trash, and I do that on Tuesdays. Oftentimes I'll vacuum everything up that nobody vacuumed before, and I'll do that on Tuesdays, okay? Because I want to make sure that this church is presentable and everything, and I want to lead by example. But the reality is that if God has anointed me and gifted me to preach and teach, then I need to be spending the majority of my time preparing to preach and teach. I'm not trying to get out of vacuuming. Trust me, I'm not. Because come in on any random Tuesday and you'll probably see me vacuuming. Or shifting chairs. Or setting stuff up. Okay, so I'm not trying to get out of that. But I am telling you that eventually Jethro is going to look at me and say, Kev, stop doing everybody else's job. Know what you're supposed to be doing and do it. This is why in this church, I don't like you got to do what you got to do. If you don't have a lot of people, then many people will wear multiple hats. I get that. But eventually, you've got to be in a position to where I can say, hey, Faye, this is your strength, not mine, so I really need your help in this. And I'm just going to turn it over to Faye. Okay? When I think about stuff like outreach and all of that, I'm going to look at people like Kathy and people like Craig Oviatt, Renee Oviatt, people like Billy, and I'm going to say, you know what, this is your guys' strength. This is not my strength, but I have a heart for it, but I don't know how to do it. So I'm going to trust them to do it, right? You got to stop doing everybody else's job. And so that's why in this church, we like to find out what your strengths are, what has God anointed you with, and then let's focus on that. Don't try to do all things to all people, to every person, and do everything, okay? Okay, you can't be on the worship team, on the youth staff, on the children's church staff, on the pastoral care staff, and then be head usher, and then run our women's department. You can't do that. Now, I know our heart is to do it because we love all of these people. And we want to usher because we have a heart to serve. And we want to do kids because, like Sarah has a heart for kids. And we want to do worship because we love music. And we want to do youth because we love youth. And we want to do outreach because we love outreach. Listen, I know you love it all, so do I. But it's not sustainable because something's going to hurt. Can I tell you, there are people not in this room that should be in this room because they're overworking themselves. Now, don't try to assume who that is. I'm not putting names to that, all right? I'm just saying, there are times where we just can't do anymore because we've overworked ourselves. Why? Because we're trying to do this department, 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 and now we've overworked ourselves. So now we're tired. Okay? We've got to consider that. Okay? Now listen, if the pastor asks you, hey, can you help me come in on Tuesday and help me vacuum a little bit because it's really bad, I need some help. Don't look at me and go, Pastor, I'm really taking your teaching to heart and I really feel like I need to do this over here, so I don't think I can do that. We serve where we need to serve, and we serve out of a servant's heart, and God will bless you. But what I'm saying is don't try to wear too many hats. Okay? So Moses was wearing too many hats, and Jethro had to put it to him and say, listen, man, it's not sustainable. You can't do everything. You cannot do everything. So he saw that Moses was going to teach. He was going to teach the precepts, line by line. He was going to teach the teaching, right? He saw that, and he exhorted Moses, saying, listen to my voice, I will give you counsel. You shall teach them the statutes of the laws and show them the way in which they must walk and the work they must do. This is what Jethro was telling Moses. This is what you're doing. Okay? You are going to teach them. You're going to show them how they walk. You're going to show them how they work. And then you're going to let them do it. So he was basically, in essence, saying, Moses, stop doing everything and do what you're supposed to do. Teach. Teach. You can't be the youth pastor and the kids pastor and the senior pastor and the counselor and the judge. You can't do it. And the janitor. You can't do it. Do what you're supposed to do. And that's teach. Okay? So I would challenge all of us as leaders, where are our strengths? What has God gifted us to do? What should we be doing? And then knock it out of the park. My dad used to always get on my case because sometimes I would just do so much that I was good at a whole bunch of things, but a master of nothing. A jack of all trades, master of none. Right? And so finally I said, you know what? I got to figure that out. I got to figure this out. God, what do I need to take out? What do I need to stop doing? Right? I meet with a table of pastors every Thursday. It was such a great meeting this last Thursday because when we went around the room, Pastor Dwayne was there. When we went around the room, I noticed that these people, these friends, these men of God, we can identify each one. And we noticed, didn't we, Dwayne, that if we really thought about it, each one of these senior guys in this around this table had unique and different giftings. And so the conversation turned like this, like, what if all of these senior pastors stopped trying to do everything in their own church and just did what they were supposed to do? And you shine in this gifting, and Dwayne shines in this gifting, and Kevin shines in this gifting, and then we cooperated and we utilized everybody's strengths. Could you imagine what this city would turn into if a bunch of pastors started thinking like that?
That's right. Oh, yeah.
Well, can I tell you that a bunch of pastors have started thinking like that? It's cool. It really is cool. Because I can't do what Dwayne does. I can't do what a Craig Oviatt does. I can't do what a David Manick can do. Okay? That dude is just like super brilliant. Okay? In fact, he's coming in and teaching a marriage and relationship seminar in January, first week of January. It's going to be off the charts, unbelievable. Okay, but we kind of teased him because when we said he was coming to teach, and I think it was Craig that said, "Well, are you going to bring an interpreter?" Because he is at such a high level of intellect. Even when he talks, it's like you need a PhD to even converse with the man. But he did say he'd bring it down for us and it'd be fine, so I'm trusting God in that. But I can't do what David does, right? So we've got to understand what we're good at, understand where God has gifted us, understand where God has blessed our ministries, and then knock it out of the park right there. Stop trying to do everything. Okay, so that's what Jethro was telling him. Understand your unique call. Moses, you're going to be teaching. And then you're going to offload all those other things so that the people who are supposed to be doing those things can do those things. So Moses had to give up his ushering position. Moses had to give up his worship pastor position. Moses had to give up his youth pastor position. Moses had to give up his children's pastor position. Moses had to give up his janitorial position, which he probably was happy about. And then he had to do what? Teach the word. Teach the work. And then release it. Right? So we're going to release it. So when I ask someone like Pastor Randy to come in and be our youth pastor at this church, he will testify to this. I did not ask Pastor Randy to come in and be the youth pastor of this church, and then I'm every day telling him how to do his job. I don't do that.
Come on.
I don't do that.
True.
When Sarah decided to help be the director of our kids' church, I don't call her up and tell her how to do it. Okay? When I asked Bob to teach, I don't call him up and say, well, I want you to teach it this way. Okay? What we do is we teach by example. So Randy knows how to run his youth group because he watches me run the church. Sarah knows how to run the kids program because she watches me run our program. Right? And we teach by example. And then what do? We empower them and we release them to do what God has gifted them to do. Now, being the senior pastor and Moses, the way he did it is if something gets a little askew, then we jump in and we give them godly counsel and godly teaching and we help them grow. But I am not the one setting up the kids' church every Sunday morning. I'm not the one that comes in on Sunday night, like tonight, to set up youth service for tonight. I'm not the one that sets up the cameras anymore or sets up the sound system anymore. I don't do any of that. Why? Because we've empowered our people to do what God has gifted them to do, and we let them do it. Moses wasn't doing that. And so he had to be called on the carpet there. You got to let your people do what they need to do. So, you've got to rest. You've got to take time for yourself. You can't be sustainable if you're working from sun up to sundown. And you've got to delegate. You've got to understand your unique calling. And number 3, select qualified leaders to assist you. Number 3 is select qualified leaders to assist you. And this is where Jethro really gets practical with Moses. Okay? He looks at Moses and he rebukes Moses. You're not the only one who can do this job. You need to find some leaders you can trust to help share the load. So I have to always ask myself, what are you doing, Kevin? You're not the only one who can do this. Right? I catch myself sometimes hopping in and taking over some things, and I got to remind myself, Kevin, you're not the only one who can do this. You're not the only one who can set up chairs. Now, for those of you who know me, you know I like the chairs a certain way. But I'm not the only one who can set them up that way. I can show Aldo how I like the chairs, and then I can trust him to do it. I've shown Drew how I like the chairs, and then he comes in at 7:30 in the morning and he starts setting up chairs the way I like it. But I don't have to do it because other people can do it, right? I don't have to set the worship set because there's other guys that can do that. I don't have to set the teaching here because other people can do that. So you got to select qualified leaders that you trust to do the jobs that you shouldn't even be doing. And that's what I've had to do. Select qualified leaders to do the job that I should not be doing, right? I'm not going to go and have a seniors Bible study every week. I'm not going to do it. Not because I don't love the seniors, but because I can't do everything. It's not sustainable. So I have Pastor Maria, who has a seniors Bible study every Wednesday. I can't do it all, right? I can't meet with a bunch of guys every Monday morning to run a Bible study at Annette's at 7 a.m. It's not sustainable. Not for me to do that. But there's a guy like Bob who has been doing it for years. So I let Bob do it. I don't need to do it, right? I can't possibly come back every Sunday night and run a youth ministries here at the church. So I let Randy do it. It's not sustainable for me to try to do that. I've got a Seahawks game to watch. Listen, when you can delegate to qualified leaders, and the key word is qualified leaders, okay? I'm not just saying just go delegate to everybody because you should be doing it, right? I'm not going to go delegate my youth ministry to some cat who doesn't know what they're doing and then has issues, right? I'm going to delegate it to qualified leaders. One of the qualifications of being a leader in this church, if you're going to hold any position in this church, is to to subscribe to our core values. One of our core values is to never stop learning. The day you stop learning in this church is the day you can't hold a position here anymore. Because we never arrive. We've never arrived. We all can be better. And the only way to be better is to put yourself in a position to learn more. So we subscribe to that core value, right? So you disqualify yourself when you don't subscribe to those core values. You disqualify yourself, at least in this house. You know, I'm not saying other people's houses. I'm not saying Dwayne's church. I'm not saying Dwayne's people should be at L.I.F.T class every month or they're not qualified to lead in Dwayne's church. Right?
Should be.
Yeah. Dwayne says, well, we're going to talk about that. No. But you know, I mean, everybody, you know what I'm saying. Okay? So you can't just delegate to somebody because they have a heart or because they have a, God bless you, brother.
Thank you.
You can't just delegate to people that really aren't qualified. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Number four. After you've selected qualified leaders to assist you, Jethro's telling Moses you need to give these leaders responsibility and authority. And so he provided an outline. Again, Jethro was very practical with his leadership counsel to Moses. And he understood that a leader's span of control, and I want you to write this down if you're taking notes. Jethro understood that a leadership span of influence over people. A leadership's span of control is only about 10 people. Now, I know you have these mega churches with thousands and thousands and thousands of people, but as you build your leadership team, it starts with every leader really only has control of about 10 people. Okay? So if you look at this church, we have much more than 10 volunteer staff and leaders and whatnot, people serving in this church. But I don't touch them all. Okay? Not everybody that volunteers at CLC do I even have a direct
influence over.
Yeah, I mean, I don't meet with every single volunteer of our church. I can't possibly do that, right? So I only have a span of about 10 people that I can directly influence by speaking into their life, by having lunch with them, by meeting with them weekly, daily, whatever. I only can reach about 10. Well, Jethro knew that, so he spoke to Moses about that, right? So Moses has all these thousands of people. Now, I can indirectly influence them from the pulpit, through my other leaders, right? So I can honestly say, and go to bed at night feeling comfortable with this, I can honestly say that, man, I've influenced a lot of teenagers in the city of Salem through my youth pastor, right? Because I directly speak into Randy's life. The other day, I was just feeling a little disconnected because with everything that they've been going through, being in the hospital for so long and our busy schedules, I just had to call him. He goes, hey, what's up? Nothing, man. I feel like I haven't talked to you in a while. So we spent about 40 minutes on the phone, just catching up, right? But I have that direct connection with him, and I can do that with about 9 or 10, if I'm really, really feeling good, maybe 12 people, right? And then I expect Randy, and you can ask him, I've put this expectation on him forever, I expect Randy to influence the same number of people directly, right? So he's going to directly influence about 10 to 12 people, and then he's training up his youth staff to what? Do the same. So if Brandon's on youth staff, if Sarah's on youth staff, I can walk up to Brandon and Sarah at any moment, and I can ask Brandon and Sarah, hey, who are you guys hooking up with? Who are you speaking into? Who are you influencing? Who are you encouraging? Who are you building up? Right? And I'm not going to put them on the spot, but every single one of us should have an answer. And if we don't, then we need to go home and do some work and say, God, show me, who can I be an encouragement to today? Who can I help build up? Because let me tell you something, as a leader, the best way to build yourself up as a leader is to build somebody else up as a leader. Right? Mm-hmm. I'm not even joking about that. That is so real to me. I am where I am today because I built up countless number of people to be where they are today. Because it's not about me. It's about God, the people that God puts in front of me. Right? So I've lost track of how many people that have been raised up in our ministries, and I've got them all over the country. All over the country now. And I'm not saying that in a prideful, hey, look at me way. I'm saying I'm here today because I chose to build up other people. That's why I'm so passionate about it. And so Jethro was telling Moses, hey, listen, man, you need to build somebody up so that they can build somebody. Well, wasn't that Paul's model anyway? Paul and Timothy, they taught teachers how to teach other teachers so that they could teach other teachers, and it goes on and on and on. We should always be leaders who are teaching leaders, who are teaching leaders to be leaders, teaching leaders to be leaders.
That's right.
It's about church multiplication, not addition. I'm not interested in adding 100 people to my church, 200 people to my church. I'm not at all interested in that. But I am interested in multiplying my church. So if I can speak into a Bob and Nelda, then I'm not wanting to add Bob and Nelda to my church. I'm wanting to add a Bob and Nelda who will go out and influence hundreds and hundreds of other people. Now that I'm interested in, right? It's not about adding people, it's about multiplying people into the kingdom of God. Okay? So we've got to give them responsibility and authority. So when I bring someone like Sarah into the kids ministry, someone like Randy into the youth ministry, someone like Bob into the teaching ministry, someone like Maria into the seniors ministry, someone like Aldo and Corinne into our pastoral ministry, when I bring all of these people into our ministries, now I have to give them responsibility, but not just responsibility, authority. Right? So when people come and complain to me about the youth ministry for whatever reason, and that doesn't happen, but if it did, on occasion people have concern or whatever, I said, well, did you talk to Pastor Randy? I don't know why you're bringing it to me. Talk to Pastor Randy. He's the youth pastor. Right? Why are you bringing it to me? Because I'll just caution you now, I've got Pastor Randy's back, no matter what you say.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. It does not matter what you say to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Pastor Randy's back.
Good. Good.
I've got Bob's back, no matter what you tell me. You can come in and say, man, I went to that Revelations class and it's full of holes and he's missing it and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, did you go talk to the teacher? Because he's the one who taught it. Why don't you go educate the teacher?
That's right.
Now, let me just caution you there. If it's Bob is the teacher, I would not recommend you educating Bob. Okay, I would not recommend that. But I got Bob's back no matter what you say to me, right? I got Maria's back no matter what you say to me. Right? So we've got to be careful. So not only am I giving my leaders responsibility, but I'm giving them authority. Now, if they abuse their authority and they go askew with their authority, then it's on me and I will handle that. You don't need to handle that. Okay? You don't need to handle that. I don't need you guys coming in and saying, Pastor, that music is way too loud. Don't you think we need to turn that down? I've got leaders that determine that. And if I think it's too loud, I will address that with them. So if you think it's too loud, do I think it's too loud? I don't think it's too loud. Okay? I trust my leaders. If my leaders say it's too loud, then it's too loud. They'll turn it down. Now, we want to be sensitive to people's ears, so we don't want it to be super loud, so we give you earplugs. Problem solved. All right? Problem solved. But we give our leaders responsibility and authority. Responsibility and authority. Here's in verse 21 and 22, we see that Jethro's talking to Moses, and he says, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of what? 10s. And let them judge the people at all times. You can't wake up, Moses, every day, sun up to sundown, and do this. Start delegating. Start giving them leadership and authority and responsibility. So what he was basically saying is, okay, Moses, here you are. You're the captain. You're the senior guy. Everything you see, you rule over. But now I need you to have a couple guys right here. I need you to train them. I need you to teach them. I need you to work with them. Show them the ways. And then let them rule all of these people. And then those 2 guys are going to have 4 guys. And they're going to teach them, they're going to train them the way you taught them, and then let them rule over and it goes all the way down to leading 10. All the way down to leading 10. Listen, just in this room alone, I can say, okay, let's say I'm in charge of this whole place right here, okay? Now I'm going to pick a guy like Pastor John from Utah. I said, Pastor John, I can't do all of these people. That's just way too many. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you half the room, and I'm going to give Pastor Maria the other half. So I'm going to look at it all in the bigger picture, but I need you to help me with this half. And Pastor Maria, I need you to help me with this half. And then you 2 are going to look at your halves and go, oh man, that's way too much for me. Don't worry about it. You're going to go to Lori and Pastor Randy, and you're going to call Pastor Randy and say, Pastor Randy, Pastor Kevin asked me to take care of this, but I need your help. Here's what he likes. Here's what God says. Here's what we do. Now, Pastor Randy, I need you to do that with this half of my half. And then, Lori, I need you to do that with this half of my half. Pastor Maria says the same thing. Oh, this is overwhelming me. Don't worry about it, because you got an AJ right next to you. So teach AJ, he's going to help you with this half. And then you got a Pastor Dwayne right behind you, and he's going to help you with this half. And we keep doing that because your influential span can only reach about 10 to 12 people. So give them leadership, give them authority, give them training, and give them responsibility. You do all of that, and that's how we run the thing smoothly. Jethro was trying to teach Moses this, right? How many of you would ever say you've just overworked yourself? Uh-huh. And how many of you say, man, if I had a team of leaders, man, it'd make it a lot easier. Yeah, so let's go get the leaders. Let's go get the leaders. How do you start? Well, I don't know how you start. I know leaders in churches right now, they came out of the bar. They came straight out of the bar. I told you with the story about me going to dinner in the bar, and this guy who was drunk out of his mind, couldn't even talk right. He goes, yeah, if God showed up, we'd all go to hell right now. Now, for those of you new here, I wasn't like going to the bar to drink. We were at the bar because there was no tables available, and we could get our dinner right then and there. So I had a colleague of mine who was a converted Muslim. He said, yeah, let's just eat at the bar. So we bellied up to the bar for our meal. This drunk guy thought we were all going to hell if God showed up. I said, man, I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong. By the time the dinner was over, he put his hand on my shoulder, and in the most sober voice possible, he goes, man, I just need you to know, I needed to hear every word you said. Because my colleague and I were talking about the church. He asked about the church, and we were telling him about the church, but I need to hear every word you said in the most sober tone possible. I put my hand on him, and I just said, man, it's never too late for you. It is never too late for you. God has forgiven you, and you need to know that he has more grace for you than you even think. Come on. Tears starting to come down his eyes, like, can we pray for you? My converted Muslim friends looking at me going, He gets up and he agrees, and we pray for this guy right in the bar. So where do your leaders come from? Possibly the bar. Now, I'm not saying everybody go to the bar and fill our departments with drunks. Right? We still got to go back to point 2. They need to be qualified leaders. But where do you start? Was that point 3? Thank you. Qualified leaders. But where do you start? Love and compassion, grace and mercy, the same stuff that God put on you, right? All right. Got a few minutes left. This really isn't rocket science, and it's not a bureaucracy. It's really just these various levels of management, right? You have your general store manager, then you have your assistant manager, then you have your department managers, you have your department assistant managers, then you have your supervisors, right? Then you have your stock people, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the list just goes on and on and on. No different. When you're trying to be an influencer for Jesus Christ, don't take on so much that you are no good anymore.
That's right.
Okay? Understand you can't do everything, and you've got to find qualified leaders. You got to teach them, you got to train them, and then you got to delegate to them, and you got to give them responsibility, and you got to give them authority. Okay? That's where you have to be as a leader. So, will your leaders that you bring up make mistakes? Sure. If I can use Pastor Randy as an example, has he ever made a mistake?
Yes.
Pastor Randy and I have many conversations. Most of them good. Almost always good. But will your leaders make mistakes? Sure they will. Get over it.
That's right.
Get over it. We all make mistakes.
That's right.
Get over it. Hey, listen, don't come up to me and say, man, that Pastor Randy, I don't know, man. You know did you see what he did? I had this client in Chicago just the other day, and I happen to be the business development guy for a delivery company, and we deliver furniture. And for this particular client, we deliver, I don't know, maybe several trucks a day full of furniture. So we deliver thousands of pieces of furniture every single day for this one client. He calls me up in my office right here. He calls me up. I go, hey, Mike, how's it going? Oh, I just said his name. Shoot. You guys don't know Mike. He's in Chicago. There's a million Mikes in Chicago. I won't tell you his store.
Oh, that might.
I go, hey, Mike, how's he going? He goes, well, Kevin, I know you need to train your guys. You guys don't know what they're doing, and you need to put somebody on the truck with them. Blah, blah, blah. He messed up my client's sofa, and blah, blah. I go, your sofa? What happened? There's a seam. They didn't care. They need training on how to load a truck, how to take it off the truck. I go, Mike, how many pieces of damage do we have today? Well, that sofa was important client. I know, but we delivered like 3,000 other sofas for you. And one of them was messed up?
0.03.
Seriously, you want me to fire this crew because they messed up on one piece? But that's how we run our churches sometimes. Like, that Pastor Randy, man, I don't like what he's doing, man. So we need to get somebody else in there. What? Do you know how many, we can't even count how many teenagers have come to Christ and have lived a life with Christ because of this man and his wife's ministry.
Amen.
Can't count them.
That's right.
And I know this for a fact because he sat under my ministries as a youth staff years ago. I've known him since he was in high school. You can't count the number of people that he has positively influenced for Jesus Christ. So don't come to me with a little complaint because you don't like the color of the walls in his youth room. Or because you think his music is a little bit too much. Or because his service isn't quite organized enough. Or he's not calling your kid enough times. You know what I'm going to ask you? How many times you call your kid this week?
Yeah.
Come on. How many times you take your kid to coffee this week?
Yeah.
Don't put it on my youth pastor when you yourself as a parent aren't doing exactly what you see. My youth pastor is not called to be your kid's parent.
That's right.
Okay, I got to get off this soapbox. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Point taken.
I'm just saying, I got my staff's back.
That's good.
Okay?
That's right.
I know my staff. I put them there because I trust them. I've given them leadership, responsibility, and authority. Don't come with your little tiny complaint, because I'm telling you, it doesn't go far with me. Just doesn't. All right? Number 5, and then I'll be done, because we're almost out of time. Jethro looks at Moses, and he gives him this counsel. Only do those things which others cannot do. That's what he's telling. See, Jethro advocated that Moses manage by exception. In other words, what he meant by that is, listen, I don't want you scrubbing the toilets unless you have absolutely nobody else who can scrub the toilets. So it's by exception. I don't want you getting up at sunrise and going to bed at sundown unless that's absolutely you have nobody else. Okay? So I'm saying the same thing about my ministries. I'm not going to lead worship. I've had many people ask me to lead worship again. It's like, man, Pastor Kevin, I miss when you lead worship. You do so good. And it's all, I mean, I appreciate the compliments. It's great. I appreciate that. But listen, I'm not going to get on that stage and lead worship when I don't have to.
That's right.
I've got plenty of qualified leaders that can do it.
That's right.
So I don't have to. I lead by exception. Now, don't get me wrong. I have a passion for music. So every once in a while, I'll get up just because I want to. But not because I have to. I don't have to, right? So we need to lead by exception. In other words, we don't do everything just because we can. We do what we need to do. Then find leaders to do all the other stuff that you don't need to do, right? It's all about delegation. You know what it is? It's not just about delegation so you don't have to do it all. It's also you're robbing somebody of growing in their own giftings if you don't allow them to do it. So years ago, and trust me, my mom knows me well enough, and so does Pastor Randy. I am such a worship pastor kind of guy. It was very difficult for me to pull myself off of the stage. When I launched this church, I was very involved with the music of this church, very involved with leading the worship too. I think Corinne was part of that team. She remembers. And eventually I came to the point where I just had to sit down. And we had a very difficult conversation. In fact, Corinne has talked to me personally about this. And I just had to sit down and trust my team. Trust my leaders. Give them responsibility and authority and trust my leaders. And so that's what we do. That's how we do it, right? I only do the things that nobody else can, right? So sometimes I go and straighten the chairs because nobody else knows how to straighten the chairs the way I do it. But it would benefit me greatly if I just teach somebody. Someone like Jesse who comes in and just serves the church behind the scenes, you don't even know. And he doesn't like any of the recognition. He's not looking for a pat on the back, and I'm not giving him a certificate. But it is true that he comes in when nobody else comes in and helps me with stuff that nobody else is helping me with. Right? So it makes sense that I just showed Jesse one day, hey, check out these chairs, this is what we use, this is how we measure it, this is how we put it in, and blah, 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 and then he can do it. Right? Because he helps, he's a helper like that. He's a servant. Called him the other day. He said, oh, are you at the church? No, he texts me, and sorry man, I don't mean to embarrass you, but he texts me and says, blah, 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 are you at the church? I'm not at the church. Are you at the church? He goes, well, I was just there. Do you need something? I turn around. Quick U-turn, I can turn around. I go, no, man, I'm good. I'm good, thank you. That's a servant's heart.
That's right.
That's the heart of a servant. That's who we train up, lead, teach, so that they can be a leader, have authority, responsibility. Just going to talk to me later. No, bro, I wasn't signing up for any of that stuff. If you need something, I'll do it, but man, I'm not signing up for that stuff. I'm just kidding. Dawson Trotman, he was the founder of the Navigators, once said, never do anything of importance that others can do or will do when there is so much of importance to do that others cannot do or will not do. In other words, I have to be the one that allows people to do what they're willing to do and can do so that I can do the stuff that people don't know how to do or aren't willing to do. Right? So that's why a lot of our leaders are the first ones here and the last ones to leave. Because they're going to do the stuff that nobody can do or is willing to do. Everything else, we've got to delegate. Make sense? So Jethro concluded his session with Moses by saying, if you do this thing and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all this people will also go to their place in peace. In other words, it wasn't just about Moses, it was about the people. If you will get these concepts, Moses, these leadership concepts, then not only will you thrive, but your people will thrive. And so I'm looking for my people to thrive. Because I know that, and here's just how I think, if my people are thriving, then guess what? I'm thriving. So it's not about me thriving first and then you'll thrive. It's about you thriving first and then I'll thrive. And if you lead your people the same way, then you will see blessing beyond blessing, beyond blessing, beyond blessing in your house and your ministry. Now, I realize that this doesn't answer every question about delegation and leadership and all that, but, live class every month. And you come in, you'll get more, okay? But I hope that this helps you understand that you don't need to feel bad when you don't do everything, okay? When you can't do everything, you don't need to feel bad. But let me just close with this caveat. What you are called to do, and what your giftings are, and what you committed to, hold yourself accountable to doing that to the best of your ability. Don't get lazy on that. Don't get lazy on that. If you are called to do children's church, then you do children's church and do it well. If you're called to do youth church, then you do youth church and do it well. If you're called to youth leadership development, then you do youth development.